Hey everybody, welcome back to Making Stuff with Stuff. It's me, Miss Tish. It's the show where we make stuff with stuff. I would like to welcome you to my house. Welcome to my home. I live here with my two dogs. My niece is here. My nephew hangs out here. They may pop in, who knows. You may see a dog or two. They're adorable and I love them. But today our science experiment, because today we're going to do a science experiment, if I didn't already mention that. Our science experiment is about density. So what is density, Miss Dish? I know you're wondering. You're asking it in your brain. You're thinking, I wonder what that's all about. Let me tell you. Density describes how heavy something is compared to how big it is. Density. Scientists, before we get into our experiment, use a set of steps called the scientific method. And they use those steps when they conduct an experiment. So the first step is to make an observation. So a scientist observes things and they say, interesting. And they rub their chin like this and they go, interesting. So let's all rub our chin and think, interesting. Yes. They make an observation. The next step is to ask a question based off of their observation. And they can say, I wonder what would happen if. Or I wonder what would happen when such and such, right? The next step is to make a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an educated guess. So they say, I think this will happen or that will happen based off of the question that they asked about their observations. The next step, and the fun step, I think, is to conduct their experiment. So they gather all the supplies they need to make the experiment happen, to test their hypothesis. Next, they draw a conclusion based off of their experiment. Did their hypothesis work out the way they thought it would? Or were they wrong? Draw conclusions. And lastly, they report their results. So some scientists like to report their results to their experiments in a scientific journal, or they post articles online, or they tell people about it on the TV or in person. All exciting steps. So let's do our experiment about density. What we need for our experiment are the following things. You need a container big enough that you can fit an orange in, because that's our next material. We need an orange. I am going to use two different oranges. I have one with the peel on it and one without a peel on it. You can do this with one orange. That's totally fine. I also have this towel because I don't like to make messes. And again, your container can be any container. It could be a cup. It could be a bowl. It doesn't necessarily have to be a giant glass vase. This is just what I had. I don't know where I got it. Our last thing we need is some water. So this pitcher is full of water. So let's follow the scientific method as we do our science experiment about density. And then we'll talk more about what happened in our experiment. So our first step of the scientific method is to make an observation. And in my life, I have noticed that sometimes some fruits will float in water and some fruits don't float in water. Observation. Have you ever done a bobbing for apples thing? It's usually in the fall at like people's fall parties and things. They fill a bucket full of water and they dump some apples in there and you have to go in there and try to catch an apple with your mouth. I didn't really like it, but some people do. That's an observation I made. Apples float in water. Sometimes other fruits don't float in water. So my question is, will an orange float in water? Good question. My next step is I'm going to make a hypothesis. So here's what I think. I think that both an unpeeled orange and a peeled orange are going to sink to the bottom when I fill this with water, because they're heavy. They're pretty dense for their size. So our next step is to conduct our experiment. So let's get started. First, we need to fill our container with water. You can fill about halfway or just deep enough that an orange can fit in there. That's Thaddeus right here. He's my boy dog. He's adorable. He is a Labra healer, which is a part lab, part blue healer, Australian cattle dog fella. He is a hoot. So, I filled our container with water to do our experiment about density. The density. Do an exciting experiment about density. So, I'm going to take my unpeeled orange first. And if you're doing this at home and you only have one orange, do the unpeeled orange first. And again, my hypothesis was that this orange is going to sink all the way to the bottom because it's heavy. It's an orange. So let's try it. Interesting. It totally floated in the water, which was not what I had guessed at first. That's interesting stuff. So I'm going to test this peeled orange. I keep getting mixed up. This peeled orange and see if my hypothesis was right. So I guessed that both my peeled orange and my unpeeled orange are both going to sink to the bottom. I was clearly proven wrong on one orange. So let's see if my hypothesis will hold up. Hey, look at that. It totally sank to the bottom. But now I'm kind of confused as to why one sank and one floated. Huh. And that is, I just drew my conclusions. That's our next step, is to draw the conclusions. And I concluded one floats and one sinks. And I have already reported my results because I'm telling you about it right now. So I wonder why this works. So let's talk about our experiment and how this happens. Whether objects sink or float in water all comes down to that word we talked about before, density. Stuff that's more dense than water, that's heavier than water, sinks to the bottom. Stuff that's less dense than water floats on water. So I'm kind of thrown for a loop here because they're both an orange. So why did this happen like this, right? Why is one orange floating and one orange is sinking? And let me tell you, it all lies in the peel of the orange. So when you're doing this experiment, I hope that you will look at the orange peel. And you'll see it has all these little dots on it. If you look really closely at it, you can hold it up to the light, you see the little edge and it has little dots in it. All of those little dots are air pockets that are filled with air. And this orange floats on water because air is less dense than water. And that's why that works. The one without the peel doesn't have the air pockets. So it's going to do what an orange is supposed to do and sink to the bottom because an orange is technically heavier than water. And that's how our experiment works. All fun and exciting stuff. Let me move this over here. I hope that you will do this experiment at home. And I hope that you will tell your friends about it, or your aunts, or your uncles, or your cousins, or your sister, or your brother. And I also hope that you will try different fruits. I wonder what would happen if you did it with a lemon, or a lime, or a grapefruit. Grapefruits are huge. Surely that will sink to the bottom, right? Let's test it and find out. I hope that you will send your results of your testing to this email address because I would love to hear about your results and love to see pictures that you take along the way. You can email me at makingstuffwithstuff@gmail.com. You can also email me if you just want to say hi because I miss some of you guys. Well, all of you guys, really. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and a great rest of your Friday. And I hope you tune in on Monday because we're going to talk about my favorite bird. Goodbye. See you guys.